She bought coffee for a stranger. Next morning, a millionaire landed at her door. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The morning rush had just begun at a small corner coffee shop in Portland. The smell of roasted beans filled the air, warm and comforting against the drizzle tapping on the windows. Olivia Bennett stood in line, her hair still damp from the rain, her uniform jacket smelling faintly of detergent and cheap perfume. It was payday, but after groceries, rent, and gas, she had only $7 left in her wallet. She planned to buy one small black coffee, nothing fancy, just enough to stay awake for the double shift waiting for her at the diner. As the line moved forward, she noticed a man in front of her. His jacket was worn at the elbows, and his shoes were covered in dried mud. When it was his turn to pay, the card reader beeped twice. The barista sighed. The man's voice was low, embarrassed. "I am sorry. I think my card is maxed out." The people behind him began to grumble. Olivia hesitated, then reached into her wallet. "It is okay," she said softly. "I got this." She placed a crumpled $5 bill on the counter. The man blinked in surprise. "You do not have to do that," he murmured. She smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but maybe someone would do the same for me." The barista handed him the coffee, and the man looked at her for a long moment, as if memorizing her face. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough but sincere. Olivia shrugged, trying to act casual. "Pay it forward someday." He nodded and left, disappearing into the drizzle. She did not know it yet, but that tiny gesture, $5 and a paper cup, was about to change her entire life. Olivia took her own coffee and stepped outside. The wind was sharp, biting through her thin coat. She walked the 5 blocks back to her beat-up Toyota, the one that coughed before starting every morning. The gas light was already on. She sighed and whispered to herself, "Just 2 more shifts. You can do this." The day dragged on in a blur of clattering dishes, spilled sodas, and forced smiles. By the time she got home, her son Eli was already asleep on the couch, his math homework still open. She tucked a blanket over him and sat quietly beside the window. The rain had stopped, but the street outside shimmered with puddles reflecting the orange glow of the streetlights. Olivia pulled the old wallet from her pocket and looked at the empty space where that $5 bill used to be. For some reason, she smiled. "Maybe he made it home," she whispered. Then she took out a scrap of paper and scribbled something down for herself. "Keep going." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, but inside, for the first time in a while, she felt something small and bright flicker in her chest hope. She did not know that miles away, in a penthouse high above the city, a man in a freshly pressed suit was staring at the same paper cup she had bought, her words written across it in black ink. And he was smiling too. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but gray clouds still hovered above the city. Olivia woke to the faint hum of traffic outside her window. The clock read 6:30. She rubbed her eyes and looked around her small trailer. The heater had finally died sometime during the night. Eli was curled under the blanket on the couch, his hair sticking up in every direction. She smiled softly, brushed a kiss across his forehead, and whispered, "I will make you pancakes when I get back." She changed into her diner uniform, tied her hair into a messy ponytail, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, filled with the smell of wet asphalt and pine. Her old Toyota coughed twice before starting. On the dashboard, the gas light glowed like a quiet warning. By 7, the diner was already buzzing with the sound of frying bacon and clinking plates. Olivia worked the morning shift, pouring coffee, taking orders, and smiling through exhaustion. "Another cup of black for table 5, her manager called. "And remember, no free refills." "Yes, Mr. Collins," she answered, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. She grabbed a pot of steaming coffee and moved between tables. Her shoes squeaked on the tiled floor, and every tip felt like a victory. Around mid-morning, the diner door swung open, letting in a rush of cold air. Olivia glanced up and froze. A man stepped inside, tall, clean-shaven, wearing a tailored gray coat and polished shoes. He looked completely out of place among the neon lights and laminated menus. For a split second, their eyes met, and her stomach tightened. He looked familiar, but she could not place where she had seen him. He smiled politely. "Table for 1, please." Olivia led him to a booth near the window. "Can I start you with coffee?" she asked. "Please," he said. His voice was calm, steady, but there was something familiar in the way he spoke. When she poured the coffee, his hand brushed the paper cup he had placed on the table. A message was written on it in black marker. "Keep going." "Oh." Her breath caught. The memory of the rain, the man with the broken card, and the $5 bill flooded back. Her voice trembled. That is the cup from yesterday." He looked up, a small smile forming. "It is. I kept it. It reminded me that kindness still exists in this world." Olivia blinked, confused. "You are not the same man you cannot be." "I am," he said quietly, "but I was not entirely honest about who I was yesterday." He reached into his coat and placed a business card on the table. "Ethan Carter, Carter Holdings." Her eyes widened. She had seen that name before on billboards, on the news, in articles about billion-dollar projects. The words came out barely above a whisper. "You are Ethan Carter?" He nodded. "I run a foundation that funds small businesses and community programs. Yesterday I was out visiting our field locations undercover. I wanted to see how people treat strangers when they think no one is watching." He paused, then smiled gently. "You surprised me, Miss Bennett." Olivia's heart pounded. The millionaire from the news had been standing right in front of her, drenched in rain, and she had handed him her last $5 without a second thought. I did not know," she stammered. "That is exactly why it mattered," Ethan said. "Most people look away. You did not." He slid an envelope across the table. "This is not payment. It is an invitation. I want you to visit our community center in the city. We are looking for someone to help us design a new outreach project, something built on genuine compassion." Olivia hesitated. "Me? I just make coffee and wait tables." Ethan leaned back, studying her with quiet sincerity. "That is why you would be perfect. You know what it feels like to struggle. You understand people. And that makes you rare." For a long moment, Olivia said nothing. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the coffee machine, the hum of a country song filled the silence between them. Finally, she took the envelope in both hands. "I will think about it," she whispered. "That is all I ask," Ethan said, standing up. "But please, do think about it soon." He placed a crisp $20 bill under his cup and walked out. The bell above the door jingled softly as he disappeared into the morning light. Olivia stared at the cup on the table. The same words stared back at her, "Keep going." It was like the universe had thrown her own message right back in her face. That evening, after her shift, she drove home in silence. Eli met her at the door, waving a crayon drawing. "Mom, look! I drew us a big house with a garden." She smiled, but her mind was somewhere else. She opened the envelope. Inside was a simple note written in neat handwriting. "Kindness has a way of finding its way home. Ethan, Das." Below it was a business card and an address. Carter Foundation Headquarters, downtown Portland. Olivia set the letter down and looked out the window. The clouds had begun to break, letting streaks of golden light fall across the wet street. She held the cup tightly, the one she had saved from that morning, and whispered to herself, "Maybe it is time to keep going for real this time." Chicked. Far above the city, in an office lined with glass and steel, Ethan Carter stood by the window, holding his phone. A faint smile crossed his face as he reread the message he had sent. "Let us see if she believes in herself the way I believe in her," he murmured. Outside, the sun broke fully through the clouds. For both of them, a new chapter was quietly beginning. 2 days passed, and Olivia could not stop thinking about the letter. Every time she looked at it, her heart raced. The Carter Foundation Headquarters, downtown Portland. The words looked like they belonged to someone else's life, not hers. She tucked the card into her purse, went to work, and tried to ignore the feeling that her world was quietly shifting. On the third morning, she finally decided to go. She dressed in her best clothes, a faded blue blouse and black slacks she had ironed twice to smooth out the wrinkles. Eli hugged her tightly before school. "You look pretty, Mom," he said. She smiled, trying to hide her nerves. "Wish me luck, buddy." The city was alive when she arrived downtown. Towering buildings reflected the gray sky. People in suits hurried across the crosswalks, phones pressed to their ears. Olivia felt small in the middle of it all. She checked the address again and looked up at the glass tower with Carter Foundation written in silver letters above the entrance. Inside, the lobby was quiet and bright, filled with the faint scent of coffee and fresh flowers. A woman at the front desk looked up. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" "I think I do," Olivia said, her voice barely steady. "Olivia Bennett, Mr. Ethan Carter asked me to come. The receptionist's smile softened. Yes, he is expecting you. Please, take the elevator to the 12th floor. Oh, when the doors opened, she found herself in a hallway lined with photographs of smiling families, community events, and volunteers. A man in a charcoal suit approached her. It was Ethan. He looked different in daylight, confident yet warm. Olivia, he said, shaking her hand. I am glad you came. I almost did not, she admitted. I thought maybe this was some kind of mistake. He smiled. No mistake. Come on, let me show you something. He led her into a conference room filled with blueprints, charts, and photographs of food trucks, shelters, and small cafes. We are launching a new initiative, Ethan explained. Mobile coffee trucks that provide free coffee and meals to low-income neighborhoods. We call it Project Keep Going. Olivia stared at the board, stunned. Keep going? That is what I wrote on your cup. Exactly, Ethan said. Your words inspired it. We need someone who understands what kindness feels like when life is hard. Someone who knows the people we are trying to reach. I want that person to be you. Her throat tightened. Me? But I do not know how to run a project. I am not educated for this. You are educated by life, Ethan said gently. And that counts for more than a degree. He handed her a small packet of papers. This is just an offer to train with us for 3 months. You will shadow our team, learn how we operate, and if it feels right, you can join full-time. Olivia sat down slowly, her hands trembling as she turned the pages. The salary listed was more than she had made in a year at the diner. I do not know what to say. Say yes, Ethan replied with a faint grin. Say you believe in what you already started. She looked at him for a long moment and then nodded. Yes, I will try. No, see ya. For the next few weeks, Olivia found herself in a world she had never imagined. She rode with the outreach teams in vans full of coffee and sandwiches. She met single mothers, veterans, and workers who had lost their jobs. Each conversation reminded her of her own nights of fear and hope. She took notes, listened, and began suggesting small changes that made big differences. Simpler menus, local ingredients, and a pay-what-you-can option for anyone too proud to ask for free food. Ethan visited often, watching quietly from the sidelines. He never treated her like charity. Instead, he treated her like an equal. Sometimes, during long afternoons at the community park, they would sit together with paper cups in hand. You ever think about what you would do if money was not a problem? He asked one day. She laughed softly. Sleep more. Fix the heater. Maybe take Eli to the coast. He smiled. That sounds better than half the board meetings I have ever been to. Love. Olivia glanced at him, realizing how different he seemed from the headlines. You do not act like a billionaire, she said. Good, he replied. I do not want to. I want to remember what the world looks like from the ground. For the first time in years, Olivia felt a sense of purpose. She woke early, excited to work. At night, she told Eli stories about the people she met and the dreams they were building together. He would listen with wide eyes and say, You are helping people, Mom. That is what heroes do. But despite the warmth growing between her and Ethan, a quiet fear lingered in her heart. She wondered if this was all temporary, if someday he would wake up and realize she did not belong in his world. She hid that thought behind her smile every time they met. Then, one Friday afternoon, Ethan called her into his office. We are hosting a public event next week, he said. I would like you to speak about Project Keep Going. Tell people how it started. Bye-bye. Me speak? She said, startled. You started it, he reminded her. All I did was follow your lead. She hesitated, nerves tightening in her stomach, but his calm gaze made her nod. Okay, she whispered. I will do it. As she left his office, Olivia glanced down at the paper cup she still carried in her bag, the same one from that rainy morning. The ink had faded, but the words were still clear. Keep going. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and whispered to herself, All right, I will. Outside, the city glowed with evening light. The reflection of the Carter Foundation tower shimmered in a puddle at her feet, and for the first time, she saw herself not as the waitress who barely survived, but as the woman who had started something worth believing in. The morning of the event arrived faster than Olivia expected. She stood in front of the mirror in her tiny bathroom, her hands trembling as she tried to fix the collar of her white blouse. Eli sat on the couch, eating cereal from a paper bowl and watching her with sleepy eyes. You look nervous, Mom, he said between bites. I am, she admitted. But nervous is good. It means it matters. Outside, the sun had just risen, turning the wet streets into a river of gold. Olivia drove to downtown Portland, the same route she had once taken with fear in her chest, but this time there was something new in her quiet determination. The Carter Foundation lobby was filled with volunteers, reporters, and local business owners. Banners hung from the ceiling. Project Keep Going. One cup, one act, one community. Olivia stood near the stage, clutching her note cards. Her stomach churned, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. Ethan appeared beside her, calm as always, dressed in a dark navy suit. "You will do fine," he said gently. "Just speak from your heart. That is what people will remember." She nodded, her throat dry. "What if I mess up? Then they will see you are real," he said with a small smile. "And that is exactly why they will believe you." When it was her turn, Olivia stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright, blinding for a moment. She took a deep breath, feeling hundreds of eyes on her. Then she began. "Good morning," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "A few months ago, I was a waitress at a diner on the edge of town. I did not know how I would pay rent or how I would keep my son in school. Then, one rainy morning, I spent my last $5 on a stranger's coffee." A quiet murmur spread through the room. Olivia continued, her voice gaining strength. "That act did not change the world. But it changed something inside me. I realized that even when life feels small and hard, kindness still has power." She told them about meeting Ethan again, about the letter, about the moment she saw her own handwriting on that cup. "Keep going," she said, holding up the faded paper cup. These two words started all of this. The audience clapped softly, then louder, until the room filled with applause. Ethan smiled from the front row, pride shining in his eyes. For the first time, Olivia felt like she belonged there. After the speeches ended, guests moved around the room, tasting the coffee from the new trucks and taking pictures for the news. Olivia stepped outside for a moment, needing air. The city stretched before her, alive with noise and light. She had never imagined she would be part of something so big. Ethan joined her on the balcony, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "You were amazing," he said, handing her one. "That story will reach more hearts than any donation ever could." She smiled faintly. "I just told the truth." "That is what makes it powerful," he said. There was a pause, the quiet hum of the city between them. "You know, Olivia, this project is only the beginning. I want you to take the lead from now on. You have the heart for it." Her eyes widened. "You mean run it?" He nodded, with support of course. "But yes, I want Project Keep Going to be your vision." Emotion swelled in her chest. "I do not even know what to say." "Lovecraze." "Say yes," Ethan said again, the same way he had weeks ago. Olivia laughed softly. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." They stood together, watching the sunlight glint off the glass towers. For a moment, it felt like the whole world was exhaling. But as the crowd began to leave and the last camera lights dimmed, a flicker of uncertainty returned to Olivia's heart. She could not help wondering, was this real? Or was she still just part of an experiment, a story that would end once the headlines faded? Ethan turned to her as if reading her thoughts. "You still doubt this, do you not?" She hesitated, looking down at the cup in her hand. "I have lived long enough to know good things do not always stay." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe it is time we prove otherwise. Jungle." For a long moment they stood in silence, the hum of the city below mixing with the sound of distant laughter. Then Ethan said quietly, "Come to the headquarters tomorrow. There is something I want to show you." And though she did not know what awaited her, Olivia felt her heart beating faster with a sense of something new, hope mixed with the promise of revelation. The next morning, Olivia arrived at the Carter Foundation headquarters earlier than usual. The building looked different in the pale sunlight, almost softer, less intimidating. The security guard greeted her by name now, and she smiled back as she stepped into the elevator. She still could not believe how much her life had changed in just a few months. When the elevator doors opened, Ethan was already waiting. He wore a gray sweater instead of his usual suit, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "Good morning," he said. "Ready for a small adventure?" Olivia hesitated. "Adventure?" He smiled. "You will see." They walked through the office and down a quiet hallway that ended at a set of glass doors leading to the rooftop. The wind was cool but gentle when they stepped outside. Below them, the city buzzed with life cars, voices, the hum of a world that kept moving. Ethan pointed toward the far end of the rooftop where a large canvas was covered by a white sheet. "Go ahead," he said. "Pull it off." Olivia frowned but obeyed. When she lifted the cloth, she froze. It was a painting, a mural, bright and detailed, showing a small coffee shop in the rain. A woman stood at the counter, handing a steaming cup to a stranger. Across the bottom were the words, "Keep going." Inspired by Olivia Bennett. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan, what is this?" He stepped beside her. "It is part of our new campaign. Every community center we build will have a mural like this, your story, your message. I wanted you to see it first." Lam. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "I do not know what to say." "You already said it," Ethan replied gently. "You said it that morning when you handed a stranger a cup of coffee." Olivia laughed softly through her tears. "I never thought something so small could matter." "Small things always matter," he said. "You reminded me of that." They stood side by side, looking at the mural. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Ethan turned to her. "There is something else I need to tell you." Olivia looked up, suddenly nervous. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "When I started going undercover, I told myself it was about research, about understanding poverty from the ground level. But when I met you, it stopped being research. You made me see that money means nothing without purpose. And somewhere along the way, I started caring more about your opinion than any investors." Her heart skipped. "Ethan." He smiled faintly, unsure, almost shy for the first time. "I guess what I am trying to say is I care about you. Deeply." Olivia looked away, overwhelmed. "You do not have to say that. I work for you. I do not want anyone to think—" He interrupted softly. "This is not about work, Olivia. This is about two people who found each other when they least expected to." The wind brushed her hair, carrying the faint scent of coffee from the lobby below. She met his eyes and saw no arrogance there, no pretenses, only sincerity. "I do not know what to do with that," she admitted. "Do not do anything," Ethan said with a small laugh. "Just know that it is real." The rooftop door opened behind them, and a young assistant poked her head out. "Mr. Carter, the helicopter is ready for your next meeting." Olivia blinked, startled. "Helicopter?" Ethan grinned. "Yes, I have to check on one of our sites near the coast. But I was hoping you and Eli could join me this weekend. The new community center there is almost done, and I think you should see it." She shook her head, smiling despite herself. "You travel by helicopter?" He laughed lightly. "Only when traffic is terrible." For a moment they just looked at each other, the wind swirling between them. Then Ethan stepped closer, his tone soft. "You changed my life, Olivia, and I do not say that lightly." Ardengal. Before she could answer, the whir of rotor blades echoed across the rooftop. The sound grew louder, whipping her hair around her face. Ethan squeezed her hand briefly, then let go. "Think about the weekend," he said over the noise. "You will love the view." She nodded, her voice lost in the rush of air. "I will think about it." As he walked toward the waiting helicopter, Olivia stood by the mural, watching. The blades cut through the air, lifting him into the sky. The morning sun flashed against the windows of the aircraft, and for a fleeting moment, it looked almost like light itself was carrying him away. Olivia smiled faintly. "Keep going," she whispered, the words almost lost in the wind. She turned back toward the door, her heart full unsure of what would happen next, but certain that whatever it was, it would matter. That weekend, Olivia packed a small bag for herself and Eli. The note from Ethan had been simple. "Be ready by 8. Dress comfortably." She had hesitated for an hour before agreeing. Something in his voice that day, steady, warm, but vulnerable, had stayed with her. Eli could not stop bouncing with excitement. "Are we really going on a helicopter, Mom?" She smiled, fastening his jacket. "It seems that way, sweetheart. But remember, we are visiting one of Mr. Carter's community centers. It is not just for fun." "I know," Eli said proudly. "You are going to help more people." "Tai." At exactly 8, the rhythmic thump of rotor blades filled the air. Olivia stepped outside, shading her eyes as a sleek black helicopter descended near the open field behind their trailer. The wind sent her hair flying as Ethan stepped out, waving. He looked completely at ease in a simple jacket and jeans. "Good morning," he shouted over the noise. "Ready for takeoff?" Eli squealed and ran forward. Olivia laughed, holding his hand tight as they climbed aboard. Moments later, the helicopter lifted into the air, the ground shrinking beneath them. From above, Portland looked like a toy city, tiny houses, winding rivers, patches of evergreen. Eli pressed his face to the window, eyes wide with wonder. "Mom, look! The clouds look like cotton candy." Ethan smiled. "First time flying?" Ellie nodded eagerly. "First time ever." Olivia watched them, her heart swelling. She had not seen her son this happy in a long time. For a brief, weightless moment, all her worries about bills, rent, and the future disappeared. After a 40-minute flight, the helicopter began to descend near the Oregon coast. Below them stretched a small town, bordered by cliffs and silver waves. As they landed near a brand-new building painted in soft cream and blue, a group of people waved from the entrance. A sign above the doors read, "Keep Going Community Center." Olivia gasped. "Ethan, you did not tell me." He smiled. "This is the first one, built in your honor." She turned to him, speechless. "In my what?" He nodded. "You inspired all of this. The mural, the trucks, the training programs, it all started with you. This center will provide food, shelter, and job training for single parents. Your name is on the foundation plaque." Tears blurred her vision. "I do not deserve that." "Yes, you do," Ethan said softly, "because you reminded me what real generosity looks like." Loka. As they walked through the building, volunteers greeted them warmly. There were classrooms filled with donated books, a small kitchen that smelled like bread, and a playroom where Eli immediately joined a few kids building with colorful blocks. Olivia stood in the doorway, watching him laugh, then turned to Ethan. "It is beautiful," she said. He looked around, nodding. "It is a start. There will be more centers like this, across the state, and I want you to lead the program." Lev. Her mouth fell open. "Me? Let it?" "You already do," he replied. "You just have not realized it yet." For a long moment, Olivia said nothing. The wind from the ocean drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of salt and freedom. "Ethan," she finally whispered, "you have changed everything for me, for Eli, for so many people." He smiled gently. "No, Olivia, you did that. I just gave you the wings." Cull. Later that evening, as the sun set beyond the cliffs, they stood outside the center watching the orange sky fade into violet. Eli sat nearby with a group of volunteers roasting marshmallows over a small fire pit. The sound of his laughter mixed with the distant rhythm of the waves. Ethan handed Olivia a cup of coffee. "Do you remember that first cup you bought for me?" "How could I forget?" she said, smiling. He held up the same cup, now sealed in clear glass, the words, "Keep Going," still visible. "I keep it as a reminder," he said quietly, "that one act of kindness can change more than just one life." Olivia looked at him, her heart full. "You kept it all this time?" "I kept it," he said, "because you taught me what it means." They stood there in the golden light, the waves whispering below. Olivia realized she no longer felt small. She felt seen, valued not for what she had, but for who she was. As the last light faded from the sky, Ethan turned to her. "Olivia," he said softly, "I meant what I told you before. I care about you, and I want to see where this goes if you are willing." She met his gaze, her voice trembling. "I am." For a moment everything was quiet except for the sea breeze and the laughter of children behind them. Olivia took a deep breath, smiling as she whispered, "Keep going." "Okay." And for the first time, she truly believed she could. A few weeks later, Olivia's world felt brighter than ever. The Keep Going project had become her daily purpose. She worked side by side with the foundation team, organizing outreach programs and training single mothers to run the new coffee trucks. Everywhere she went, people recognized her story. Some brought their own cups with the same two words written on them. But with success came whispers. Reporters began calling her the waitress who changed a millionaire's heart. Some headlines were kind, others cruel. One morning, while Olivia reviewed volunteer schedules, a woman from the foundation's public relations team walked in with a worried expression. "You should see this," she said, handing Olivia a tablet. The screen showed a blog post titled, "Ethan Carter's Charity Romance, Real Love or Publicity Stunt." Olivia's chest tightened. The article showed pictures from the event, of her standing beside Ethan, smiling. The comments below were full of speculation. Of course the billionaire fell for the poor single mom. How convenient. Another PR trick. Ethan walked into the office moments later. He saw her face and immediately understood. "You read it, did you not?" She nodded. "People are saying I am just a story you created to make yourself look good." Her voice trembled with frustration. "Maybe they are right. Maybe I do not belong in this world." Ethan took a deep breath and closed the door behind him. "Olivia, listen to me. You belong here because you earned it. Every single thing we built came from your compassion, not from my money." "It does not feel that way right now," she whispered. He moved closer. "Then let us show them the truth." "How?" she asked, her eyes wet. "By continuing to do what you always do, help people," he said. "Let the work speak louder than the noise." Habla. That evening, she sat alone in her small office at the community center. The walls were covered with children's drawings and thank you notes from families the project had helped. She picked up one note written in crayon. "Thank you, Miss Olivia, for making my mom smile again." Her hands trembled as she pressed it to her heart. She realized then that her fear had never been about the gossip. It was about believing she was not worthy of good things. She whispered to herself, "Keep going," and wiped her tears. The next morning, Olivia returned to work early. Reporters waited outside the building, cameras ready. Instead of hiding, she walked straight to them. "Yes," she said calmly. "I was a waitress. Yes, I gave a stranger a cup of coffee. But what matters is what that cup started. If helping people becomes a scandal, then I hope the world gets more scandals like this." The clip went viral within hours. People began to defend her online, calling her the woman who turned kindness into change. Donations to the foundation doubled within a week. That evening, Ethan found her on the rooftop of the headquarters, looking out over the city lights. "You handled that beautifully," he said. Olivia smiled, the wind brushing against her hair. "I just told the truth again," he nodded. "That is why people believe you." She looked at him quietly for a moment. "It still scares me sometimes, all of this." "Chow." Ethan placed his hand over hers. "Then let us face it together." Below them, the city glowed, alive and endless. Olivia took a deep breath, feeling the calm settle inside her. She realized she no longer had to prove her worth. The world had already seen it. And as the night deepened around them, the two of them stood side by side, the words that had started it all echoing softly in her mind. "Keep going." Spring arrived quietly in Portland, bringing soft rain and the smell of blooming trees. Months had passed since the storm of rumors, and the Keep Going project had grown beyond anything Olivia could have imagined. New trucks, new volunteers, new centers, each one carrying the same message she had written on that first paper cup. One Saturday morning, Olivia stood in the courtyard of the downtown center, watching families line up for warm meals and coffee. She was surrounded by laughter, children playing, and the gentle hum of music from a small speaker nearby. Eli helped pass out pastries, his cheeks red from the cold. When he saw her watching, he waved proudly. Ethan arrived a few minutes later, dressed casually, a warm smile on his face. He handed her a cup of coffee and said, "You did this." She shook her head. "We did this. You believed in me before I did." He smiled, "And you proved me right." They walked together through the crowd, greeting people and listening to their stories. Every face told a different version of hope veterans rebuilding their lives, parents finding jobs, teenagers volunteering after school. The world felt bigger, brighter. Later that afternoon, as the event came to an end, Ethan led her toward a small stage set up under a white tent. "Before we wrap up, there is something I would like to share," he said to the crowd. "This project started with one act of kindness. A woman who had almost nothing gave what she could to a stranger. Because of her, thousands of people now have a place to start again." He turned toward Olivia, his voice steady. "You showed me that leadership is not about power, it is about compassion and love." The crowd quieted. Olivia's heart pounded. Ethan took a small box from his pocket and knelt down, right there in front of everyone. "Olivia Bennett," he said softly, "you taught me what it means to live with purpose. Will you marry me?" Gasps spread through the crowd, followed by silence. Olivia's hands flew to her face, tears welling in her eyes. For a moment, the world stood still. Then she whispered, "Yes. 1,000 times yes." The courtyard erupted in applause. Eli ran up and threw his arms around both of them, laughing through happy tears. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, and the three of them stood together under the fading afternoon light. Cameras flashed, but Olivia did not care. All she saw was her son smiling, the people they had helped, and the man who had believed in her when no one else did. Ethan looked at her and said quietly, "You kept going, and look where it led us." Olivia laughed softly, her voice trembling with joy. "I guess kindness really does come full circle. Ybor." And as the crowd cheered, the same helicopter that had once landed in front of her small house soared above the city, its shadow gliding across the rooftops like a reminder every act of goodness finds its way home. A year later, the Keep Going Foundation had become a movement. Across Oregon, coffee trucks painted in warm yellow and white rolled through towns, each carrying the same phrase on their side: "Kindness never stops." Every week, stories poured in, letters, photos, and thank you notes from people whose lives had been touched by a single act of compassion. On a clear spring morning, Olivia stood at the entrance of the newest community center in Portland. The grand opening banner fluttered above her head. Volunteers hurried back and forth, preparing for the celebration. Inside, a mural stretched across the wall, a replica of the one Ethan had shown her on that rooftop, the image of a woman handing a cup of coffee to a stranger in the rain. Eli tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, look, that is you." She laughed softly. "It is all of us, sweetheart." Everyone who decided to keep going. Outside, the sound of rotor blades grew louder. A helicopter circled above, then landed in the nearby field. The crowd clapped as Ethan stepped out, wearing a light gray suit and holding a bouquet of white tulips. He walked straight to her, smiling in the sunlight. "I almost missed my own anniversary," he said playfully. Olivia laughed. "You could have just taken the car." He shrugged. "But where is the drama in that?" The crowd laughed with them. Ethan handed her the flowers, then turned to address everyone gathered. "1 year ago, this woman reminded me that wealth is not measured by what we own, but by what we give. Today, this foundation stands because one person chose kindness when it was hardest to give." Applause rippled through the crowd. Olivia blinked back tears, her hand tightening around his. She whispered, "We built this together." Ethan smiled. "And we will keep building one cup at a time." As the ceremony ended, the two of them walked hand in hand through the new center. The walls were lined with photos of volunteers, families, and smiling children. Near the front desk, a small glass case displayed a single paper cup, the original one from that rainy morning. The words "Keep Going" were still written across it, the ink slightly faded, but unbroken. Olivia stopped and stared at it for a long moment. "This started everything," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "And it will keep reminding everyone who walks through these doors that kindness can change the world." Number. Eli ran ahead, waving at a group of children. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting the room in gold. Olivia turned to Ethan, her eyes shining. "We really did it," she whispered. He smiled and pulled her close. "No, Olivia, you did it. You just let me tag along." She laughed, resting her head against his shoulder. The noise of the crowd faded into the background, leaving only the warmth of that moment. And as the camera of the world seemed to pull back past the center, past the city, past the horizon, Olivia's voice echoed softly, steady, and sure. "Keep going. Because the smallest act of kindness can build a life, a love, and a legacy that never ends."